Welcome to the Podkey summary of characters of the Final Fantasy XIII series. This episode is all about what the Final Fantasy XIII trilogy is really doing under the surface. Fate, identity, grief, and a long argument over whether being saved by a god is even a good thing. And once you pull on that thread, a lot of the trilogy starts to make more sense, from Lightning's evolution across 3 games to why Caius lands as such a memorable antagonist, and why the cast's reception could swing so wildly depending on how the story was presented. The trilogy is framed as a battle with destiny, and not in a vague fantasy prophecy way. These characters keep getting handed futures and duties by fal'Cie or gods, and the real drama comes from them resisting being turned into tools. That's the key idea running through all 3 games. People may be pushed into an unjust predetermined fate, but they're not reduced to it. Serah is the clearest example. Her focus is supposed to lead toward destroying Cocoon, and she turns that mission into saving it instead. The story keeps insisting that even inside a system built to control you, choice still matters. Each game shifts the mythology around that idea. Final Fantasy XIII is mainly about the fal'Cie manipulating humanity. 13-2 leans harder into Etro, mortality, and the wish for rebirth. Then Lightning Returns moves all the way into salvation. Lightning's rebirth and the creation of a new world. But the trilogy never treats salvation as automatically noble. Bonavelze wants to erase people's memories, grief, and grudges so humanity can exist in a kind of clean happiness. Lightning rejects that completely. Her answer is basically, people aren't free if you scrub away everything difficult about being human. And if humanity beat a god like this once, it can do it again. Lightning was conceived very deliberately as a powerful, hard-edged female lead, not a softer heroine in the mold people might have expected from earlier Final Fantasy games. What's interesting is that her personality came first. The clothing and voice came later. So her identity wasn't just visual branding, even if she absolutely became a branding powerhouse. Her original name, Claire Farron, matters here. Taking the name Lightning is her attempt to become stronger for Serah, but it also creates emotional distance between them. Strength comes with armor, and armor isolates. By Lightning Returns, the story starts undoing that. Lumina becomes the embodiment of the fear, loneliness, and vulnerability. Lightning pushed away. She's not just a mysterious side character in fancy trim. She externalizes the part of Lightning that survival taught her to bury. That's why the last game is described as a rebirth of Lightning rather than just 13-3. The point isn't only that she saves the world, it's that she becomes whole enough to need other people again. Her role across the trilogy tracks that are pretty neatly too. She starts as the central protagonist, becomes an absent figure driving Serah's quest in 13-2, and ends as the sole playable savior in Lightning Returns. Caius stands out because he's one of those villains whose motives are painful enough that the apocalypse starts to look, if not reasonable, at least tragically understandable. He doesn't want destruction for its own sake. He wants to stop Yeul from dying over and over as a teenager, reincarnating, seeing the future, and burning through her life every time she uses that gift. Etro makes this worse in a very mythic, very cruel way. Caius is granted immortality through the heart of chaos, and he also carries the burden of Yeul's visions. So he remembers every incarnation and every death. Compassion becomes a curse, with perfect recall. That's what makes the conflict with Noelle so strong. It isn't just hero versus villain. It's 2 people disagreeing about what saving Yeul even means. Caius wants to abolish time so she can never die again. Noelle starts out trying to change history. The ending finds a different answer by allowing one final Yeul to leave with Noelle and live as an ordinary human. For a series this invested in destiny, that ordinary life lands like a huge emotional win. A lot of the trilogy's character work is built around mutual transformation instead of just collecting a party and sending them on a quest. You see that in scenes like Sage and Vanille's confrontation in Nautilus, where guilt and betrayal finally erupt. You see it in Snow and Hope's reconciliation after Nora's death. And you see it in Fang and Vanille, whose bond is tied directly to shared responsibility for Cocoon's catastrophe. Serah's story is especially sharp on this point. She keeps changing history, even after learning that the prophetic visions will kill her. That makes her self-sacrifice an act of agency, not just something fate does to her. She knows the cost and chooses it anyway, because protecting the future matters more to her than her own survival. Snow gets one of the harsher reversals in Lightning Returns. The old optimism is gone after 500 years of Sarah's death, and the world falling apart. He tries to absorb chaos, become a Sith, and basically force Lightning to kill him as punishment. Instead, Lightning restores his hope and pushes him to keep living for Sarah's sake. It's a small mercy in a trilogy that does not hand those out casually. And then there's Fang and Vanille, whose relationship became one of the most discussed emotional threads in the whole series. Some critics read it as romantic, others as platonic. But either way, their bond and shared ending were often seen as one of the trilogy's strongest character payoffs. The character design side of the trilogy is fascinating, because it's doing story work and branding work at the same time. The cast was deliberately shaped to evoke a multi-ethnic United States rather than read as specifically Asian or European, and multiple designers contributed across the trilogy, including Tetsuya Nomura, Nao Ikeda, Hideo Minaba, Yusuke Naora, and Toshiyuki Itahana. Some of the details are the kind of development trivia that really sticks. Fang was originally male and inherited the overt sex appeal first planned for Lightning. Hope got the silver hair that had originally been meant for Lightning. Dodge was made 6 instead of 9, partly to heighten that protective instinct in the player. A lot of the designs also tied directly into narrative function. Eidolons turning into vehicles reinforced the series' broader transformation theme. Lumina's gothic Lolita look externalizes Lightning's hidden self. And Bonavelzi's elaborate body was designed to visually represent Nova Cresselia and the universe itself. At the same time, these characters became major cross-media assets: jewelry, action figures, perfume, clothing, snack packaging, even a Prada fashion spread. Few RPG casts have made the jump from melodramatic gods and fate plotting to luxury fashion quite so cleanly. One reason the trilogy's cast got such mixed reception is that the writing and the presentation didn't always pull in the same direction. The first game's English voice recording happened during development, but the production didn't have the infrastructure for synchronized localization. Scripts and cutscenes kept changing, which meant retranslation, re-recording, and dialogue that sometimes missed the intended emotional timing. That helps explain a lot about why some players saw strong character ideas buried under awkward exposition or strange line reads. For 13.2, translator Tom Slattery and Japanese translator Teruaki Sugawara built the Moomal tool to better synchronize localization tasks, basically as a response to the first game's problems. Then Lightning Returns had its own unusual setup, with Japanese actors recording after their scenes were already created. Critics often praise the voice acting, and, in some cases, the cast itself as one of the more clearly defined groups in the series. But the same characters were also criticized for confusing early exposition, awkward dialogue, and uneven development. So the divide wasn't just about premise. A lot of it came down to execution, timing, and whether the story could get its ideas across cleanly. The sequels made that divide even sharper. 13.2 took a real risk by shifting the focus to Sarah and Noelle while moving Lightning and Fang into supporting roles. Some critics appreciated the new emphasis and thought the newcomers got room to breathe. Others felt the sequel sidelined the series' strongest characters. Noelle, in particular, was intended as a grave, duty-bound hero, but a lot of reviewers felt he never became much more than that premise. Sarah's warmth earned praise from some corners, while others felt she still lacked meaningful power inside the narrative. Then Lightning Returns drew heavier criticism for how it resolved the wider ensemble. Reviewers argued that some characters showed up mainly because the plot needed closure for them, not because their own motivations were actively driving events. That's the trade-off at the heart of the trilogy's ending. The developers clearly wanted every major character to have closure, but giving everyone an ending can make a story feel complete and a little over-arranged at the same time. That's probably why the 13 trilogy still gets such passionate reactions. Its ideas are big, messy, sincere, and sometimes more elegant in concept than in delivery. But they stick with people. And for all the gods, prophecies, and cosmic furniture, a lot of it comes back to a pretty human question. Who do you become when the future is trying to decide for you? This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.